It's Tuesday, October 1st, and guess what, folks? Yeah, there will be an October surprise, the election cycle tradition, the October surprise, but I think Trump just won the election today. I think Kamala Harris is toast now. Iran sent missiles into Israel, and guess what? It's a huge story, and it's a huge story, the October surprise on October 1st, just 34 days away from Election Day, November 5th. Today on Bolling, we're going to cover that. Also, an historic attack from Israel, from Iran, on Israel, from Iran. The October surprise is real, folks. It's happening as we speak, and it's here. Trump just won the election today, thanks to Iran. Plus, the only VP debate night preview you'll ever need right here. We're all over tonight's debate. An historic, havoc-wreaking port strike is here. And where's Pete Buttigieg, by the way? Where is he? Where is our famous and our wonderful transportation secretary? Well, he's training Tim Walz for Tim Walz's big debate night tonight. And by the way, your daily truth bomb is here as well. So here we go. All right, this is it. Bolling truth bomb of the day, folks. Another massive escalation in the Middle East. Right now, Iran launching a full-scale attack on Israel, spraying several hundred interballistic missiles after a terror attack on the ground in Tel Aviv. This is unprecedented. Iran attacking Israel directly. As we speak, crude oil, $4 a barrel higher right now. Gasoline, folks, will be soaring in the days to come. Add that to a massive port strike crippling the Northeast. Watch out for a fire to break out in your wallets. That's Joe Biden. Thanks, Kamala. And by the way, thanks, Barack Obama. Hold it here a second. I just want to talk about this just for a minute. Oil prices up $3-4 a barrel on day one. Will the U.S. respond? Watch oil skyrocket $10, $15 a barrel, maybe $20 a barrel. That's $1, $2, $3 higher for your gasoline prices. Remember what happened the first time around in 2021 when there was a supply chain problem? Well, you have a port strike going on, an oil price skyrocketing. This couldn't be worse for Kamala Harris. This couldn't be better for Trump, but unfortunately, it couldn't be worse for our wallets and inflation. It's gonna heat up. So here's the same question and the prevailing theme. Who right now is the president of the United States? Who's the commander in chief? Who's the holder of the nuclear codes right now? Guy who spent more of his presidency on a beach in Delaware on a lounge chair? Well, that's who the official president is. And frankly, the guy who's so largely responsible for all of what's going on today. This mess, the precipice of the World War III, wouldn't even exist if Joe Biden weren't president and weren't sleeping in the White House right now. Think about it. Iran and Israel are about to be in an all-out war, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wrote out the check to Iran to help them fund their proxy wars that led to this moment. And let's not forget, Barack Obama sent billions, tens of billions of dollars over to Iran when he was president. Remember? Cash on flats flown over there. Billions of dollars from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden now. And then they removed sanctions. Last week, Israel killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. He was that country's enemy, and he was hell-bent on Israel's destruction. It was an act of defense by the country of Israel against an enemy, a common enemy, by the way. And it sent a message to enemies around the world, too. That's what happens when you show strength, something Joe Biden and his White House cronies have absolutely no clue how to do. So, think about this. Under President Trump, was there an attack on Israel from Iran? No. Was there an attack on Ukraine from Russia? No. Was there an attack on Israel from Hamas? No. In fact, don't forget, when Syria was messing around killing its own citizens. Syria. Trump was president. Xi Jinping was at the White House. They were having dinner at Mar-a-Lago. They're having dinner, and during dessert, Trump goes away for a minute. He comes back into the room during dessert. Xi Jinping, president of China, sitting next to him. He said, oh, by the way, I just bombed Syria. And guess what? Russian military members were on that military base, that air base that I just bombed. Can you imagine the reaction from Xi Jinping. Can you imagine the reaction from Putin? It didn't happen. None of this stuff happened under Trump. But you put a weak, feckless, sleepy Joe in the White House, and that's what you get, folks. This is a lesson to the Biden administration about how to deter an enemy using military force instead of hopelessly pleading for restraint and de-escalation. Sometimes you got to show strength. Sometimes you got to punch them in the nose so they know you do it again, you're going to get punched again and harder next time. Joe Biden doesn't know that. But if Joe Biden showed any strength at all, or any of his DEI-obsessed military comrades were more worried about global security, well, then maybe this wouldn't happen. And maybe if they were worried about the safety of Americans around the world, then it wouldn't happen. Maybe our allies wouldn't be in this mess. October 7th, Houthi rebel attacks, Hezbollah attacks, Iran nuclear bombs flying into Israel. Was it a nuclear bomb? I don't know, maybe. Will that be next? The terror attacks throughout the Middle East. We're next, folks. We're next. You want some more of that? You want more of that to emigrate here the way it emigrates through our southern border? Elect Kamala Harris. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said we're at the highest threat level in decades. Joe Biden has undermined our ability to deter our adversaries because he's scared of escalation or of what the squadsters might think of him. Meanwhile, Iran, Russia, and China are watching. Clearly, Israel can't afford that kind of behavior. It's survival mode for Israel. But soon enough, if we stay under this kind of leadership and these folks over here and the weak Obama-led administration that's in our White House right now, it will be survival mode for Americans too. The attacks won't stay in the Middle East, folks. They'll be here on our main streets. As missiles and bombs fly, you have to ask, who's the president right now? And by the way, looking at oil prices, the future's rocketing, this will have a direct impact on every single American already, on our country, on our economy. Here's why. Again, oil prices go up, the price of everything skyrockets. Everything goes up. Everything is tied to the price of oil. You can't transport food from one side of the country to the other. You grow in California, you eat on the East Coast. You can't bring it over because the cost of transporting it becomes exorbitant. Prices have to go up. And let's talk about that strategic preserve right now. There's supposed to be 750 million barrels of oil in our strategic petroleum reserve. Joe Biden has been tapping that to keep prices down because of his own policies are driving prices up. So he releases oil from this strategic reserve. It's down to the lowest level it's ever been, somewhere around 300 million barrels, less than half full. So he's tapping it to save his own ass, meanwhile putting America at risk. Because you know what? You know who the second or third most prolific producer of oil in the world is? The U.S. is one. Russia's close to being one. Number 2 or 3, Iran. We get into a war with Iran protecting Israel, $200 a barrel, $10 gasoline, $15 gasoline. I guarantee it. War between two energy-producing countries, the top, is very, very dangerous. Now this, combined with a port strike, which I'll get to in just a bit, this is the perfect storm for the country. With Joe Biden at the helm, or Kamala, if it's her, I'm not really sure, that's frightening. A crisis Joe, Kamala, and Barack created. And we're now expecting him to solve it? Truth bomb here, folks. None of them have. None of them will. They're all out to lunch. Well, it's a battle of the VPs. Tonight, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz will square off in New York City, 9 p.m. Eastern. But remember, it wasn't supposed to be this way. Once upon a time, it was supposed to be a matchup between Cammie Harris and J.D. Vance. Well, that was before Kamala Harris and her nefarious party comrades, undemocratically, by the way, shoved aside the old man, our ice cream-loving president, and did the old switcheroo. And Obama got his gal, Kamala Harris, instead of Joe, whom we know he never really liked anyway. Obama didn't really like Joe that much. And then Kamala Harris chose Tim Walz, of all people, under the fog of what she said, insomnia, as it turns out. And that makes a lot more sense now. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But let's talk about this, Vance and Walz. So it's a battle between Walz and Vance, and the two couldn't be more polarized. One says he served in the military, and the other one actually served in the military. One evades the press, and one happily answers every single question, and then some. Even the media has no choice but to admit that fact.
He takes questions at his rallies, even with hundreds of people there, and even coaxes the crowd a little bit. The crowd boos the journalists when they're asking questions, and it's become part of this sort of shtick that they do when they're on the road, when he's on the road in particular. And they do that to contrast the fact that Walz and Vice President Harris are really not available to the media.
Did you hear that? You know what? Maybe that's why there were some reports that either Walz was getting really nervous about this debate or even considering a way to drop out altogether, which, of course, there would be no way for him to do that because they would never recover from that. But here's the thing. J.D. Vance is a skilled speaker. He's someone with real experience in the corporate world, whereas Walz, he has none. If these CBS moderators are fair, and let's be honest, CBS, fair, unlikely, but we should at least give them some rope. Let's see what they do with it. Will they build a rope bridge? Or more likely, will they further execute journalism in the hope of derailing Trump's newfound momentum? I'm not holding my breath. And by the way, tonight, if this debate does happen tonight, wow, here's your opportunity, CBS, to say, hey, Walz, you're about to step into maybe a vice president role. What would you do to make sure World War III doesn't break out? I know what J.D. Vance would say. Leave it to Trump. Trump will solve it because he always has. Walz will have nowhere to go with that. I can't wait to see this. But likely it'll be some softball on one side, some fastballs right around the chin on the other side, if you know what I'm talking about. That network, CBS, totally dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop scandal in 2020. CBS Evening News anchor Norah O'Donnell and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan, not exactly known for their fair handling of Donald Trump. Here's Brennan very shortly after President Trump was nearly assassinated in Butler, Pennsylvania back in July.
The concern about the heightened threat level, the fact that Americans are on edge, exactly what Congressman Kelly was saying in our phoner. He said, everyone take a breath, and that we have to be responsible for protecting our democracy, and that the words we use, the rhetoric we use is part of that.
So in the moments after President Trump narrowly escapes assassination, Margaret Brennan points out that it's Trump and his supporters who are responsible. I'm not counting a fair debate tonight, folks. Think more David Muir and less Jake Tapper, unfortunately. But you see, this is all an important moment tonight. This is most likely the last debate before the November 5th election day, just 34 days away, as I mentioned earlier. And a lot of Americans don't really know either one of these guys. It's like a blank slate right now. In a survey from the Pew Research Center, at least half of voters, American voters, don't have any idea who J.D. Vance is or Tim Walz. Neither one of them. So while tonight we'll certainly tell a story, I don't think that these CBS moderators will really dig in for the truth like we do here. Sure, they'll attack J.D. Vance for his comments about the migrant crisis in Springfield, Ohio, and how Haitian migrants there are possibly, likely eating pets, including cats and dogs. They are. They'll hammer J.D. Vance for once being an anti-Trumper and then switching over to pro-Trump, but that's actually fair. Let's be honest. That's journalism. But it only works. It only remains fair if the moderators press Walz on his doubling, tripling, constantly lying about his military service. And, of course, we can expect them to attack J.D. Vance for his childless cat lady comment. But what if I were moderating tonight? Here's what would happen if I were moderating this debate. Tim Walz would have some splaining to do. Here's why. They'll probably ask Tim Walz some light questions about the actual content of his military service. Ask him something about claims of stolen valor. But I know they won't dig into these items, but they should, like this one. Tim Walz has troubling ties to China. Did you know that? That's putting it lightly. Check this out. The House GOP have demanded more answers, and a whistleblower just yesterday revealed that there are actual verified links between the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and Tim Walz. The guy lived there. He's visited China 30 times since. And get this, Tim Walz, the American politician, held a senior-ranking security clearance in China. Oh, and guess what? He married his wife on June 4th. You know what June 4th is? Well, that's the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, that massacre of the students. That's not cool. Where were the happy newlyweds, Walz and his wife, go afterwards? Well, China. They went to China for their honeymoon. That's weird. Had their honeymoon in China. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking romantic getaway, not China. I'm thinking, when I think of China, I think of COVID labs and military islands, but just me. I don't know, maybe they have a different idea of romance in Minnesota. But if I were moderating, you could bet I would hold his feet to the fire. You know, those little happy feet that seem to be moving way too fast with that big round body. And then there's this, picture this, the summer of love. Remember that? The streets of Minneapolis, one of the ground zeros for this, they're on fire thanks to the likes of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Remember the infamous riots in the summer of 2020. Well, they did so without any interference from their own governor, Tim Walz. That's right. Tim Walz didn't get involved. In fact, Tim Walz's wife said she would sleep in her bedroom with Tim, open the windows so she could smell the rubber burning. Why? What's wrong with you? Here's Walz in 2021. Not only is he on the defense, but Walz, true to many in his party, only serves to stoke the flames of racism.
This sense of dread that you've been feeling, this sense of we can't have occupying, large numbers of police on our streets all the time. That's the feeling that black parents have when they send their kids to soccer practice. And just to be candid with you, we can't be denying the right to vote to black communities.
Well, we know that's not true. That same lie dispensed by his party time and time again, that somehow the black vote is being stifled again and again. Well, research proves otherwise. But I doubt they'll demand answers for that one on this debate tonight. But this is one thing you know that Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan won't touch, and it's this. Tampons. Sorry to have to say it. Feels creepy to me to utter that word. But we have to highlight this fact. Weird-ass fact, in fact. We already know, despite her attempts to disguise it, that Kamala Harris is as far left as the party goes. She, whose father is a known Marxist professor, she who repeatedly says she wants to ban fracking until she ran for president and needed Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes and now fully supports fracking, but I digress. She who has called for price controls and the most vocal pro-crime anti-cop senator has called for defunding the police. Enter Tampon Tim, who as governor signed legislation that guaranteed access to feminine hygiene products for, quote, all menstruating students in public schools. And yes, that means boys had tampons in their bathrooms because the trans ones are actually girls, but they want to pretend they're boys, so they go into the boys' bathroom and they need their stuff. Their bathrooms mandated by Governor Timmy, Tampon Timmy. Well, one thing's for sure. This will be unlike almost any other vice presidential debate we've seen in this country's political history. In 1992, Al Gore and Dan Quayle were involved in a massively combative debate. In the history of televised debates, it was incredible. And then, who can forget this? 2008 vice presidential debates, they were parodied on SNL because Sarah Palin dropped a famous line. Can I call you Joe? Anyway, I could see Russia. Remember, they play games with this. They hate the right. And in 2020, a fly landed on Mike Pence's head. And that became an infamous meme in the days and weeks that followed. Actually, that should have been a warning to Trump to dump Pence. But I digress again. Those are some fiery debates, and yet I think tonight will be a debate for the ages. I'm thinking that if you do a shot every time the word cat is uttered tonight, you'll need some Advil and a greasy egg sandwich tomorrow morning to combat the hangover. Mark my words, not since My good friend Sarah Palin was chosen as a running mate for John McCain back in 2008. Have vice presidential picks seemed as important and scrutinized? So this is another all-important moment tonight in an all-important presidential race. My prediction, it won't even be close. J.D. Vance will wipe the floor with Tampon Timmy. Try to get that image out of your head for a second. And of course, tomorrow, you can expect a total breakdown of the vice presidential debate right here on Bolling. And now this, has anybody seen Mayor Pete? You know, our transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, since he missed that last supply chain crisis breastfeeding he and his husband's baby. He may not want to sit this one out, except that he might, since he apparently has been locked in a room somewhere doing debate prep for Tim Walz for tonight. So the most historic port strike just kicked off last night, and this massive, over 45,000 U.S. port workers have officially gone on strike from Maine to Texas for the first time since 1977. So what does this all mean? Allow me to introduce you to Harold Daggett, president of the International Longshoremen's Association, or ILA. He explains it very well himself.
These people today don't know what a strike is.
Right.
When my men hit the streets from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are.
So you remember when the air traffic controllers under Reagan wanted to strike, and they struck, and Reagan told them, get back or you're fired, and they said no. And there are ways to get people to strike, unions they're striking to get them back to work. Taft-Hartley. Reagan said, no, if you don't get back to work, you're fired. They said, you'll never fire all of us. He fired them all. Fired them all, risking a total collapse of our transportation system. It didn't happen, though, because we brought people in. Everything was fine. Biden could have done the same thing. He could have told them, get back to work. But here's the question. Why didn't he? And why don't they? Is it that Biden isn't too happy that he's not running for president anymore because Barack Obama had his choice of getting Kamala Harris put forward, and Biden wants Harris to suck wind on this? Because she is. You couple Iran dropping bombs into Israel with a massive port strike, she's toast. So maybe Biden is sticking it back to her the way she stuck it to him by getting him out of the way. Catastrophic, crippling to every part of industry, to our supply chain. Nothing, no products, supplies can get to Americans. That guy just said it. Don't worry, Biden administration's on it though, right? Madam Commerce Secretary.
Where have you been kind of focused and hearing on what would happen if the strike goes, let's say, longer than a week?
Again, I have not been very focused on that.
Not very focused on that, she says. What exactly is our Commerce Secretary actually focused on right now? This is the same person who said last month she was not familiar with the downward revision in jobs numbers. Unemployment. What exactly does our labor secretary do all day either? The president lays on a beach. The vice president parades around in a fancy $62,000 Tiffany necklace. Fundraisers at the border for 20 minutes. 6 states lie underwater. Human bodies are still being pulled from trees. Trees, folks, in America. Tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of damage. Where are these clowns? Where's the transportation secretary? Where's the commerce secretary? Where's the labor secretary? Does any single American feel at all protected or safe or taken care of by these people? Folks, if this strike isn't resolved quickly, we could see a repeat or worse or worse of the supply chain crisis in 2021. And I don't have a ton of faith, or any at all, actually, in this clown show right now. Well, folks, we lost a true legend on Monday, baseball legend Pete Rose. We'd love to see a picture right there. There he is. There's the man. Charlie Hustle. Who can forget in an all-star game when it didn't even count, he plowed down the catcher just to win the all-star game. This guy was held out of the Hall of Fame his whole entire career. The hit leader, Major League Baseball hit leader, held out of the Hall of Fame over a questionable gambling issue. Meanwhile, these guys are gambling on their own games all the time. We got college athletes making money, gambling on things. That man should have been in the Hall of Fame for the last 20 years. Pete Rose passed away, should have been there. He was robbed. He was robbed. All right, folks, subscribe. And absolutely go to Rumble, go to YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, go somewhere. Just hit the button. It's free to subscribe. And here's a toll-free number, 888-601-0032. Again, I want to hear from you. Tell me what you like, what you don't like, what you need more of, what you want to see going forward. We'll listen to it. We might even play your voice on this show coming up soon. Have a great night. Big debate night tonight. We'll break it all down tomorrow. Good night, everyone. Bolling, Truth Bomb, Bolling out.